Back here on HQ Spotlight, there's no off season in the NFL, right? So we know the tampering window is open. Free agency has been going absolutely bonkers all day. And we are now looking ahead to the NFL draft. Just 45 days to go until the next generation of players descends upon Green Bay, Wisconsin for the draft, all kicking off April 24th. And our guys at CBS Sports are very busy putting together mock draft after mock draft. It is Mock Draft Monday here on HQ Spotlight. And we're going to take a look at Josh Edwards' latest mock. And we've seen a lot of veteran wide receivers go elsewhere, defensive players cash in, some franchises getting their quarterbacks of the future in free agency. So it's going to be interesting to see how this mock draft can adjust. Josh Edwards himself and our NFL draft expert Ryan Wilson joining us here as we go through this latest mock, gentlemen. And we are starting at the top where there are a lot of QB needy teams outside of the top two. And Josh, we do have a mock trade where the Giants are trading up to get their quarterback of the future.
Yeah, the one situation that I was worried about was potentially Sam Darnold signing in New York, back where his career began, because I do think that he is a player that could have potentially locked down a starting quarterback job for multiple years. So the fact that he is now going to Seattle makes me feel pretty good about the Giants potentially being aggressive, trading up from number 3 overall to this pick, number 1, and taking Miami quarterback Cam Ward. I still think the Giants are likely to sign one of the veteran free agent quarterbacks. But that's going to be a short-term answer. So you can still take Ward, plug him in behind whichever veteran you sign, and be ready to roll with Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson next season.
Yeah, I love this because the Giants, it just didn't work out with Daniel Jones. And it looked like in year 1 with Brian Daboll that he and Daniel Jones were going to be able to recreate some of that magic we saw with Josh Allen and Brian Daboll back in Buffalo. It never came to fruition. They added more players, and it seemed like either injury or inconsistency, Daniel Jones just couldn't put it together. So this makes a ton of sense because coming out of the combine, Jacqueline, it felt like some distance was created between Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Fair or not, neither one of those guys actually threw or worked out. It was just interviews. So we'll see how that plays out over the next 45 days. But Cam went into combine week as QB1, and he remains QB1 for that reason. And I'll just say this. I applaud Josh for doing the mock draft Monday with his mock draft this time around, Jacqueline, because things are so fast and furious. I have no idea who's on what team, so you'll have to inform me in real time as we try to get through this thing.
Ryan, we're going to get through it together as a group. Sam Darnold is in Seattle. Justin Fields is now with the Jets, and I'm sure more news will come in as we are doing this. Let's go to the Browns because they just made Myles Garrett the highest paid non-quarterback in the league, but still they are going the defensive route in this latest mock, Ryan, and taking Abdul Carter.
Josh doesn't like me to bring this up, Jacqueline, and you don't like me to bring up your fandom either. Josh is a Browns fan. I have no idea what the Browns are doing with Myles Garrett. Just trade Myles Garrett, still take Abdul Carter, get some draft picks, figure out the quarterback situation, and maybe this is a situation where they sign Myles to a huge deal with the intentions of moving on from him inside the next 45 days. We'll see, but they're not one Myles Garrett away from getting to the playoffs and making a deep playoff run. They need a quarterback, and I understand with Cam Ward off the board, you go with Abdul Carter here. I think Abdul Carter is probably my second number 2 player on this board in terms of sheer athleticism and ability to produce day 1 after Travis Hunter. But this makes a ton of sense for the Browns. I understand it. They just, Josh, need to sort out the Myles Garrett situation and maybe find their way to a quarterback. But otherwise, I do indeed love the idea of getting Abdul Carter second overall.
Yeah, listen, Ryan is a Steelers fan, so of course he wanted Myles Garrett to be traded away from Cleveland this offseason. The fact that you can throw Abdul Carter on the opposite side now, I think just makes for a terrifying scenario for the opposition this season. Even before Myles Garrett had re-signed, I thought this was going to be the pick. I never thought Garrett was going anywhere. So the plan was always, in my opinion, to put Carter opposite Myles Garrett. If Cam Ward had been available, I would have gone in that direction. But I think the Giants, just having a little bit more sense of urgency, Tennessee knowing that they can get more from the Giants than they would the Browns, to move back a couple of picks and still get either Travis Hunter Jr. or Abdul Carter is ultimately why I went with the Giants as a trade partner. But I think with Ward off the board, Cleveland would be hard-pressed to not take a guy like Abdul Carter to put opposite Myles Garrett, because now you have a strength on your team. Yes, you've got a lot of holes to fill, but you've got a strength where you can rush the passer now, and that's going to ultimately take some of the pressure off of some of those problem areas for the Browns defense.
Josh, I know you're a Browns fan. I know Ryan's a Steelers fan. Maybe the Browns are looking at the Steelers and saying, hey, you know, they have a solid defense, some questions at quarterback, but it gets us to the playoffs every year. We kind of backdoor our way in. Maybe that's the route they're going. Who knows? Back to the mock. So we have the Titans. They trade down to number 3 in this latest mock. So, Josh, what do they do at that spot now?
This is a team that has a lot of needs, and we saw what they did on the start of free agency, going out and signing Dan Moore from the Steelers to fill that left tackle spot. Now you get an opportunity to move J.C. Latham potentially back to the right side, so you're upgrading 2 positions in theory. Now you can go out and you can get a guy like Travis Hunter Jr., who has openly spoken about his desire to play both sides of the ball. I know the conversation has been whether he's going to play offense or whether he's going to play defense. But if you leave it up to the player and he had his way, he's going to try to play both sides. If Abdul Carter is off the board, I think Hunter is the next best prospect for Tennessee to take here. And you don't get to pick in the top 5 very often. So when you're up there, it's for a reason. It means you don't have a lot of blue chip players. So now you go out, you get a player like Hunter that could potentially upgrade 2 positions for you. I think that's a slam dunk for them as they move back, get extra draft capital, and allow them to address some of their other needs potentially on day 2.
Jacqueline, not to be that Steelers fan, but the Browns pick in the top 5 quite often, and I think we know why. I just had to take that shot at Josh there. But in terms of what it means for Travis Hunter, I love this pick to Tennessee, because if they don't love Cam Ward or they don't want to take him first overall, or if a deal's too good to pass up in terms of trading down, they should do it. Now, the musical chairs quarterback carousel, they're running low on names, so we'll have to see what they're thinking there and whether Brian Callahan thinks he can fix Will Levis, so to speak, going into year 2 of their marriage together. That remains to be seen, but in terms of the way Josh described what Travis Hunter brings to any team, I think it's a home run. He's my number 1 player on my board for his versatility and his productivity and his wild athleticism. They need a cornerback, and they certainly need a playmaker, wide receiver 1, and I think you get that package from Travis Hunter. You just have to manage his number of snaps, because he has battled injuries throughout his career because he's been playing so much, but I think if you can manage that, you get a truly special player and a 2-for-1 who can do 2 things for you on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, we just showed the snap count last season at Colorado. It's well into the 700s on both sides of the ball, which is just like some unicorn stuff right there. Let's go to the Patriots. We talked about Tennessee having a lot of needs. The Patriots are certainly in that same group as well. And a lot of mocks had Travis Hunter going there. He is now off the board in this mock, and Josh has them taking Armand Membou. Ryan, your thoughts on that potential fit?
I love this. Like, Armand Membou is my number 2 tackle as we sit here, just behind Kelvin Banks Jr. Maybe Will Campbell is probably more NFL ready. But these are the conversations we're going to have to start having, Jacqueline. Will Campbell has short arms, and sometimes that scares teams away as an offensive tackle. So we'll see what happens there. Membou has plenty long arms. He only measures 6'3" and change, and I talked to him at the Combine about that, and I actually talked to a couple of Texas A&M edge rushers who were going to be first-round picks, Nick Scorton and Shemar Stewart, and they described Membou being one of their toughest tests. And I said, did you guys know he was 6'3"? Like, no, we had no idea he was 6'3", and that's sort of the point. Whether you're 6'3" or 6'4", watching him play, he is as solid as they come, play in and play out, both in pass protection and as a run blocker, and he's still relatively young. And he has an edge to him. He has some things to prove because he's heard the talk of him being too short or whatever you want to describe him as physically. And whatever you do at number 4, if Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter are gone and you're the Patriots, and as of yet, I don't think they've stockpiled any offensive tackles in free agency, you have to protect Drake May. So whether it's Kelvin Banks or Will Campbell or Armand Membou, you have to do that. And I love the idea of getting Membou here, even if he's offensive tackle, the first guy off the board, because he had a really special season last year for the Tigers.
Ryan, you mentioned that the Browns have picked a lot in the top 5, and that brings us to the Jacksonville Jaguars, because they've picked in the top 5, top 3 even a couple of times in the last couple of years. They are picking 5 here, and we know they need help on the defense. Josh Hines-Allen cannot carry the team on his own on that side of the ball. And Josh, you have them taking Michigan's Mason Graham, which feels right to me.
Yeah, I think it's a natural fit. With any luck, the addition of Mason Graham will potentially allow them to not pick in the top 10 in the future. Of course, that's going to be dependent upon Trevor Lawrence and what they're able to accomplish with new head coach Liam Cohen this season. But I think Trayvon Walker, the former number 1 overall pick, has shown strides of being a more improved pass rusher. You've got Josh Hines-Allen on the other side of the ball. Now let's throw a guy like Mason Graham in the middle there, where he's going to be able to help apply pressure from the interior. He's a little bit slight, a little bit smaller than what you would probably anticipate from a player being taken in the top 5 here. But I think if he comes out and does really well at his pro day, he's going to solidify his stock because he's a tremendous player. So if you drop him in there with those 2 productive edge rushers, I think Liam Cohen is going to have a quicker turnaround than maybe even Jaguars fans had anticipated.
Oh, that is music to my ears, Josh. We love to hear it. Ryan, Josh, we appreciate it. We are just getting started. If you're just joining us here on Spotlight, we are going through Josh Edwards' latest mock draft. We've only done 1 through 5 so far, so a whole lot to go. But in that mock, he has the Giants trading up to get Cam Ward as their quarterback of the future, and that leaves Travis Hunter going number 3 overall to the Tennessee Titans. And then we just talked about it there, Mason Graham going number 5 overall to the Jags. All right, so we know Shedeur Sanders was rumored to be linked to Vegas as their QB1, but now that Geno Smith is heading to the Raiders, what are they going to do with the number 6 overall pick? Mock Draft Monday continues, and we will answer that in this latest mock coming up on the other side. Back here on Spotlight, it is Mock Draft Monday. We are going through Josh Edwards' latest mock. I'm Jacqueline D'Agostino alongside Ryan Wilson here. And this is where things get a little spicy, gentlemen. We just went through 1 through 5. Now we're at number 6 because Vegas, of course, we heard the rumors. They were linked to Shedeur as their potential QB of the future. Then free agency has gone absolutely crazy. Geno Smith is heading out to Vegas. So, Ryan, Josh has the Raiders taking Will Campbell at number 6 in this mock. What are your thoughts on that pivot?
Well, I mentioned Will Campbell before the break about where he's going to play. Is he a left tackle? Does he have to kick inside to guard? And those are the questions that individual teams will have to answer. I think he's a left tackle until he proves he can't do that. I don't know if this is the Raiders' biggest need, but I understand Josh sort of scrambling because, again, they just got their quarterback in Geno Smith, so they probably won't draft a Shedeur Sanders here. And if you're going to get Geno Smith, who took an absolute beating last year behind that offensive line in Seattle, you might as well get him as much help as possible. So I understand the pick here. They do have some needs on defense. They did re-up Max Crosby, but they have some needs at additional edge rush or even inside at defensive line if that was a direction that the Raiders wanted to go, or maybe even look to the secondary. But is it too rich to start drafting secondary players not named Travis Hunter this high? And, of course, they need real big wide receivers. So that's something else they have to consider outside of Brock Bowers. But in terms of if you're going to build from the trenches out, Will Campbell is the pick here, and that makes a ton of sense if you have to protect Geno Smith going forward. So I get it on that level, but I do wonder what they're going to do with the wide receiver position or positions not named Brock Bowers in terms of pushing the ball down the field. Yeah, the Raiders have been making a lot of splashes over the last couple of weeks or so, and now the Jets are making waves as well because they get Justin Fields most recently as their new quarterback coming over from Pittsburgh. But Josh, you still have the Jets addressing the quarterback position in this draft with Shedeur Sanders. So is the thinking here like Justin Fields is the short-term guy and then we're looking to Shedeur for the future?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. When I first put this out, it was going to be the Raiders for Shedeur Sanders, and then they went out and they traded Geno Smith. And then today the news broke that Justin Fields was signing to the Jets. So, we have to adapt, okay? Today's free agency. Things are moving quickly. I'm going to be on a third team probably for Shedeur Sanders by the time next mock draft comes out Thursday. But I still think that the Jets could work for Shedeur Sanders because Justin Fields has been given opportunities in his career, but he has not yet proven that he can be that long-term starting quarterback for an NFL franchise. So if you bring him in as competition for Justin Fields, I think that's ultimately going to lend you to be able to, evaluate those two quarterbacks over the course of this coming season and just figure out which one is going to be the best path forward for the organization. I still think Sanders could be a possible fit here, but, I wonder now if maybe the Saints come and play for Shedeur Sanders because of the fact that a couple of landing spots have now been filled here in the top 10.
Yeah, it's crazy. We've talked about the Giants, Raiders, the Browns, the Jets, now potentially the Saints as being a potential fit for Shedeur. So it's certainly going to be interesting to see where he ends up going. Now let's talk about the Carolina Panthers here at number 8. And Lord knows they need some wide receiver help. Bryce Young needs some help there. And this is where we have Tet McMillan going. T-Mac, if you will, Ryan. That is my nickname for him, or our nickname. But how do you like this fit? How much can he help them there in Carolina, where we've seen a lot of receivers drop a whole lot of passes there from Bryce Young?
I love T-Mac for one simple reason, Jacqueline, because Pete Prisco hates T-Mac. So every time you see Pete, just say T-Mac is your favorite wide receiver, and we'll go from there. But this is a great fit, and you talked about it. There's not a lot of depth at the wide receiver position for the Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young apparently turned a corner, which was fun for everyone who's on the Bryce Young bandwagon, and I was driving that thing for a while. They have Jalen Coker, who broke out last year as an undrafted rookie at Holy Cross, and of course they had Xavier Legette, who played really well as a rookie. But beyond that, it's pretty slim pickings. Adam Thielen had a resurgence of sorts as well. But T-Mac, if he comes to Carolina, that is a big play threat from to jump. And what he was able to do at Arizona the last few years was wholly impressive because he consistently made 50-yard passes look like handoffs. That's how good he was in the air. He's not necessarily going to stack every defensive back, and that's okay. That's not necessarily his game. But he is so good at contested catches and high points and red zones, all the things that the Carolina Panthers need to get better at. I love this pick, and this feels like one of those situations where you run the card up as fast as possible at the risk of pulling a hamstring because it makes that offense better immediately.
You know, Ryan, it's interesting that you say that Pete isn't super high on T-Mac because he hates when I call Trevor Lawrence T-Law. So it has to be like a T-Mac, T-Law nickname thing that Pete Prisco has some sort of issue with. Let's go to number 9. We were looking at the Saints, and I know we just talked about potentially Shador being a fit there with a lot of different moving parts. But Josh, here in this latest mock, you do have the Saints going to get some pass rush help in this latest mock draft.
Yeah, so I gave them Shemar Stewart, the very talented, high upside pass rusher from Texas A&M. He blew up the combine, essentially led every categorical testing in Indianapolis. So he's a player that has a lot of untapped potential. You don't see the production that you would expect to see from a potential top 10 overall selection, someone of his size and athletic potential. But I think that's why you're capable of getting him here at number 9 overall. And with Chase Young still available in free agency, at least to my knowledge. I can feel my phone buzzing every couple of seconds now, so who knows what is happening at this point. But as of saying this, they do not have Chase Young back. So you're talking about Stewart potentially coming in and filling that edge rusher need for the Saints. I think that's an ideal fit for them because they've always coveted those long, powerful players that they can plug in on the edge.
Josh, you are not alone, my friend, and I'm sure, Ryan, you're in the same boat. And every commercial break, I'm going to our CBS Sports thread, and there's like 30 to 45 unread messages there. Let's go to the Bears because we are looking at the number 10 overall pick here. Of course, bolstering that offensive line has been a top priority. They had made that clear in free agency. They need to protect Caleb Williams, their quarterback of the future. In this latest mock, Ryan, they're taking edge Mike Green at number 10. Your overall thoughts on that move?
I love Mike Green, the football player. He had some off-field issues he addressed at the Combine. We'll see how that plays out. I talked to a few teams that were at the time unconcerned about those off-field issues, but if more information comes forward, we'll see how that goes. But we talked to him at the Senior Bowl, and he is a very focused young man on football, a UVA transfer, who is juiced up coming off the edge. He reminds me a little bit of Will Anderson in terms of the way he plays and that he weighs about 250-ish, 6'4", and has a nonstop motor. I've never seen someone play with their hair on fire for 60 snaps a game like Mike Green does. And then, of course, he went to the Senior Bowl and blew up the practices there. We've all seen the clip of him going one-on-one with Josh Connerly Jr. out of Oregon. And that shows up on tape, too. So I love the idea of pairing him opposite Montez Sweat. You talked about it, Jacqueline. They've already signed 3 or traded for 3 interior offensive linemen to bolster the offensive line for Caleb Williams. Maybe they need a tackle, maybe they don't. They'll figure that out as we get through this process. But they do need edge help opposite Montez Sweat. And Mike Green feels like he comes in day one and can be a difference maker.
Yeah, leading the FBS with 17 sacks last season for Mike Green. Let's go to number 11, where we're going to San Francisco. And Josh, we were just talking about some teams that were getting some pass rush help, and the Niners are in that group as well in this latest mock.
Yeah, we've got a little bit of a run on pass rushers here. And again, at this point, Joey Bosa has not signed to join his brother in San Francisco, which remains a possibility. But as of now, I've got them taking Georgia pass rusher Mykel Williams, who is a similar conversation to Shemar Stewart. He's a player that has great size. He's got great athletic traits. We just have not seen the production that you would typically expect of a player being taken this high. But again, he wouldn't be available to San Francisco at this point in the first round if he had the production to match the potential. So I sent him to San Francisco. I think it's a really tantalizing fit opposite of Nick Bosa. So, San Francisco has always looked for those long, lengthy edge rushers similar to the Saints. And I'm going to give them one here with the pick number 12.
All right, let's go to the Dallas Cowboys, where it's always interesting because we can't keep up if Jerry Jones is saying they're going to be aggressive. Are they all in? Are they not? We don't really know. Ryan, this makes a ton of sense to me. Number 12, they're taking Ashton Jeanty. We know the Cowboys have needed to beef up that backfield for quite some time. The Zeke reunion didn't really work out. Rico Dowdle was looking pretty good, but I feel like Ashton Jeanty makes a whole lot of sense here. How about you, Ryan?
Yeah, no, I love it, and it almost makes too much sense when you sort of describe the things that Jerry Jones has done in recent years. So maybe they pass on him and take a punter here, but I think Ashton Jeanty, if he's sitting there at 12 and our guy T-Mac isn't available, you certainly take him and you feel great about it. You know what's funny? I talked to Ashton Jeanty at the Combine, and I don't know how tall he is because I don't think he got measured, but I was guessing around 5'6", and I said, did any NFL teams ask you about being short? And he said, nope, no one asked me except you, so thanks for that. So NFL teams don't care that he's 5'6" or 5'7" or whatever he is. They just love the way he plays football. He's not a wide receiver. He's not an offensive tackle. He doesn't need to be 6'3". And the way he plays is absolutely electric. He's in the same conversation as Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs for me, and I think that's why he deserves to be a top 15 pick. And here he goes 12, and he gives some much-needed help to that running back room, which, as you noted, Jacqueline, has been sort of up and down once Zeke Elliott left the first time. Second time he came back, things didn't work out too well, and give Dak and CeeDee Lamb a little help to get that offense perhaps going again.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how tall you are when you're coming off that absolutely historic season that we saw from Ashton Jeanty last season. Josh, Ryan, we certainly appreciate it going through picks 6 through 12 in Josh's latest mock. Of course, the Raiders having to pivot here and going the Will Campbell route since Geno Smith is now going to be their quarterback. We have Shedeur Sanders going to the Jets, although Justin Fields is there, so that obviously could change. T-Mac going to the Panthers to help out Bryce Young, another weapon for him on the offense. So this is the first round pick 6 through 12, how Josh Edwards sees it all shaken out. And more to come. We got to hit a break, but before we do, we know there's a new QB1 in Seattle, and this guy, Sam Darnold. So will the Seahawks get him some more weapons on offense? Or are they going to address that issue in the draft? We are right back here with that mock draft for Josh Edwards and Ryan Wilson coming up on the other side here on Spotlight. Back here on HQ Spotlight, if you're just joining us, it is Mock Draft Monday. That means we are just ripping through Josh Edwards' latest mock. Josh, Ryan here with us. We've done 1 through 12. Check. Now we're going on to pick number 13, where the Miami Dolphins are picking as they try to, win a playoff game for the first time in a really long time. So, Josh, kick us off. What direction does Miami go here?
Yeah, so Miami had a couple of pending free agents at the safety position. Nick Emmanwori from South Carolina was one of the big winners from the NFL Combine. He was one of the best overall testers that we saw this year. For those that don't follow the relative athletic score, the RAS on Twitter, he posted a perfect 10.0. So somebody that has incredible athletic potential. He's got good ball production. Now we're going to throw him into Miami and replace some of that lost production to free agency.
And we're talking about the Colts, and we're not talking about our guy Anthony Richardson in terms of the Indianapolis Colts this year. Sad, I know, but here at number 14, Josh has them taking Will Johnson. Didn't run at the Combine, not sure if he's going to do that at Michigan's Pro Day, but based off of your current assessment of him, do you like this pairing?
I do, Jacqueline, and you talk about him being injured and not running, and he went from my number one player on my big board over the summer to sort of a mid to late first rounder because we don't know how fast he is. And that was one of the knocks when you talk to scouts over the summer because he's going to draw comparisons to Patrick Surtain. Patrick Surtain ran really well back in the day when he was at the Combine. But Will Johnson's long and athletic, has ball skills. Tight end might have been a consideration here as well for your guy Anthony Richardson in the Colts on offense. But I think Will Johnson with Juju Brents struggling to stay healthy, their former second-round pick out of Kansas State, I don't mind this at all. And it could be a bargain if it turns out that he gets healthy and can go right away.
All right, let's go to the Falcons, and this is also one of those teams that goes under the list of teams that need pass rush help. We've talked about 3 or 4 of them at this point, and they address that with Jalen Walker in the draft, Josh.
Yeah, the need for pass rusher has been an evergreen topic for the Falcons for several years, it feels like. One thing that we know is that Jalen Walker from Georgia is more than capable of rushing the passer. That's the one thing that he does extremely well. And while he doesn't have the prototypical size of the Mykel Williams or Shemar Stewarts that we've already discussed, Walker is incredibly quick. He's able to get into gaps. And I think just being able to supply pressure consistently is something that the Falcons have desperately lacked and are more than happy to fill here in the mid of the first round.
All right, let's go to the Cardinals at number 16 in this mock. Walter Nolen goes into that spot. So, Ryan, when you think of their first-round pick last year and Darius Robinson, how do you like his fit, both of these guys up front?
Yeah, it's funny. Darius Robinson plays on the edge primarily. He did at Missouri, and he weighs about 10 pounds less than Walter Nolen, who weighs in around 295, 300. Both incredibly athletic, twitchy defensive linemen / edge rushers. And I think Walter Nolen gives you something in terms of a lot of juice off the snap, and that he's a gap penetrator. He is going to win a lot in terms of being very disruptive in the backfield. And that Ole Miss defense is stacked with guys who are going to be first, second, third rounders. That unit was so incredibly good. We talk a lot about Jackson Dart, but that defense was started with Walter Nolen up front and went from there. And this is exactly what the Cardinals need. They have a lot of guys in the interior of the defensive line up for free agency. They're going to get Darius Robinson back healthy. He was injured for much of last season, and I love the idea of pairing him here. I haven't typically seen Walter going this high, but I think he's a mid to late first rounder, so this feels about the range where we start hearing his name called.
All right, let's go to number 17. That brings us to the Cincinnati Bengals, who have been pretty active. They tagged T, allowing Trey Hendrickson to seek a trade. Still got to pay Jamar Chase. We're waiting for that shoe to drop. And they need a whole lot of help on defense. We saw that on full display last season. So, Josh, do they go that route? Do they address that need in this latest mock draft?
We've already seen them re-sign B.J. Hill to address that interior defensive line. We just saw the first defensive tackle come off the board this last pick. So I'm going to take Derrick Harmon from Oregon, who is a player that has really risen up boards over the course of this season. And the run defense was such an issue for Cincinnati this past season. I think if you put Harmon in there next to B.J. Hill, you're upgrading that unit overall. And with so many assets being filtered towards the offensive side of the ball, you need players like Harmon that are coming in on cheap contracts, giving you good production if you're going to ultimately turn it around and be that Super Bowl contender that the Bengals obviously feel that they are.
All right, let's go to number 18, and we're looking at the Seahawks, where they've moved on from Tyler Lockett. Ryan, they sent DK Metcalf to your beloved Pittsburgh Steelers, and now in this latest mock, Seattle gets Matthew Golden here. How does he stack up with that current receiver room with JSN as it stands right now, in your opinion?
Yeah, so we came into the season talking of Isaiah Bond, the Alabama transfer, and what he was going to do for Quinn Ewers, and it was Matthew Golden that stood out. He's a Houston transfer. He has legit track speed, and he reminds me a lot of Jordan Addison, and I think that translates well to the NFL. He is going to win consistently down the field. He's a really good route runner, has great hands, provides something in the return game, so he does a lot of things. He is the exact opposite of DK Metcalf in terms of what he looks like, in terms of the muscles and the height. But he plays incredibly fast, and he'll be a nice little weapon for Sam Darnold, who was just throwing the ball to Jordan Addison last season. So maybe that'll be a nice little continuity reminder for Sam Darnold in his new home out in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, a whole lot of change that we're seeing there in Seattle and with a lot of teams. Right now, let's talk about the Bucs, because they are keeping Chris Godwin. He's going to stay there coming off of that injury. Hassan Reddick is there, but who do you have them taking at 19, Josh?
I have them going in the direction of Alabama linebacker Jihaad Campbell. And what we know about the Buccaneers is they're always going to keep the band together. You mentioned they brought back Chris Godwin, also bringing back Levante David. But I think Campbell is somebody that not only can step in and start next to him, but also gives you a little bit of a longer-term outlook at the position. In terms of comfort and just projecting him to the next level, I think Campbell is one of the safest projections just because of what he was able to accomplish with the Crimson Tide. And I think giving him to Tampa Bay here gives them a little bit more stability in the middle of that defense.
All right, so we were talking about two tight ends coming off the board here, starting with the Broncos. And Ryan, we know that they are obviously in the market for a tight end. We talked about Evan Ingram, my former Jag, being linked to them as well. In this mock, they go the direction of Colston Loveland. How do you like that move?
I'll start with this. Producer Stryker, Penn State alum, calls this the second worst tight end in this draft class behind, or the second of the two tight ends behind Tyler Warren. So I guess you picked the wrong one here. Colston Loveland is my tight end one. Like, I love the way Colston Loveland plays. It was hard to tell at times in 2024 because the quarterback play was, let's call it, inconsistent at Michigan. But back in 2023 with J.J. McCarthy, he was a playmaker. He is long. He is athletic. He can block a little bit if you need him to, but that's not why you're going to draft him here. He's going to give you the type of production that Cortland Sutton gives you in terms of the size and frame and his ability to get down the field. He's going to catch everything you throw his way, and he's going to be a security blanket on day one for Bo Nix. Had shoulder surgery when we saw him at the Combine. He'll be completely healthy by the time the season rolls around. I absolutely love this pick. And this feels about the range, Jacqueline, where these tight ends, either whether it's Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland, are going to start coming off the board. Yeah,
you mentioned Tyler Warren, so we're going to talk about him next. In this mock, Josh, you have the Rams trading up to take him number 21 overall. Tell us more about your decision on making that move with the Rams trading up to go get Tyler Warren.
Yeah, the reasoning stems from what we saw last year. The Rams were interested in moving up for Brock Bowers. Of course, he ultimately went to the Raiders, but I think giving a player like Tyler Warren, who has such incredible versatility, and putting him in Sean McVay's offense is incredibly appealing. They've went out and they signed Devontae Adams to go with Puka Nacua. They're obviously moving on from Cooper Kupp. So this is an organization that is reshaping its offense. They're directing its assets in other ways. But I think moving up just a few spots to get a guy like Tyler Warren is going to unlock some parts of their offense that maybe we haven't even seen from McVay yet.
All right, we have one more pick before we hit a break. We're talking about the Chargers selecting at number 22. We know that edge rusher, that is high on their list of needs, but here they're addressing the interior offensive line with Grey Zabel. Thoughts on that move, Ryan?
It's a great pick, and no one helped themselves more at the Senior Bowl than Grey Zabel. He played left tackle primarily for North Dakota State. He had played some interior in previous years, but last year primarily left tackle. And then he came to the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama, and only worked out at guard and center and looked like he'd been there his entire life. You talk to teams, and he's going to be a team captain on day one. He's that sort of leader, and when you talk to him, we talked to him at the Combine. Great young man, as I like to say, as I talk to these kids these days. And he's a guy that you can get behind. And it feels like there's a need at center right now. Bradley Bozeman's a free agent that you can pencil him in day one. And that offensive line is filled with first-rounders, and you have to protect Justin Herbert. And this feels like a Jim Harbaugh pick in that it starts up front. In Grey Zabel, as I mentioned, if he goes anywhere 15 to 32, that feels about the right spot, and he's going to be a day one starter.
Ryan, Josh, we certainly appreciate it. We have 10 more of these picks to go, but just quickly to recap what we just talked about, Josh Edwards' latest mock picks 13 through 22. We were talking about Walter Nolen going there and joining the Cardinals out in Arizona. Matthew Golden joining that wide receiver room out in Seattle, where they do have a new quarterback and Sam Darnold and a whole lot of new that is out there in the Pacific Northwest. And then, of course, Penn State standout Tyler Warren going number 21 overall in a mock trade with the Steelers to L.A. All right, coming up, we are talking more Steelers. Speaking of Pittsburgh, what are they going to do after they get DK Metcalf over the weekend? Mock Draft Monday continues with Josh and Ryan on the other side. Mock Draft Monday is continuing here on HQ Spotlight. We have Josh Edwards, Ryan Wilson. We have picks 23 through 32 to go, gentlemen. At 23 brings us to the Packers, where we know Jair Alexander, he's not going to be there for this upcoming season in Green Bay. So, Josh, what direction do you have the Packers taking here at number 23 overall?
Well, I've also heard that the Packers are a potential, if not likely, landing spot for Nate Hobbs, so that would help the cornerback position as well. You've got Carrington Valentine potentially on the other side, but I'm giving them Texas cornerback Jahdae Barron, who, because of his size, may have to transition to the nickel at the next level. But we've seen what Kansas City is capable of doing with a player like Trent McDuffie. He can play inside out. So now you have a little bit of versatility there in the secondary. That's why I gave them Barron, who is one of the most impressive to watch in terms of his immediate availability, just the way he carries himself as a professional.
All right, number 24, we have the Vikings, where we know Sam Darnold is no longer there. And in this latest mock, they're addressing their secondary, taking Malaki Starks, number 24 overall. Ryan, your initial feelings on that pairing?
This is a great pick, and he could be a top 15 pick. He only, quotation marks, ran 4 or 5 at the combine, but Malaki Starks has track speed on the field. He's incredibly smart, one of the smartest players in college football, and we saw that week in and week out for Georgia. Harrison Smith's still there. He might play forever, for all we know. But I think if there's going to be a contingency plan in a post-Harrison Smith world, there are worse things than Malaki Starks. He is a special player, and when you talk to people on that Georgia staff, they'll tell you exactly that. We talked to him at the combine, and he is all about football, laser-focused. And it feels like a guy that would fit right into what Brian Flores wants to do in terms of an aggressive defense, because he has tremendous ball skills, sideline-to-sideline ability, and he's a guy that you can pencil in pretty early on and get a lot of playing time out of him in Minnesota.
Yeah, also a CBS Sports first-team All-American. No surprise there. Now let's go to number 25, which brings us to the Texans. What direction do they go, Josh?
It's a similar thought process to what Jacksonville did. You've already got 2 accomplished pass rushers in Will Anderson Jr., as well as Daniil Hunter. So I went out and I gave them Kenneth Grant, the massive interior defensive lineman from Michigan, to help their run defense. I think now when you're capable of applying that pressure off the edge, you now have a guy with Kenneth Grant who is capable of taking on some of those double teams and freeing up some of those pass rushers on the edge. I think it's just a great fit for them as they look to apply even more pressure in 2025 and beyond.
All right, number 26. Ryan, we have your Steelers. A quick Steelers family group chat number count. I am at 10 text messages as it stands right now with all the news that the Steelers are making. But remember, in this mock, they traded back with Los Angeles. And in this one, they're drafting a replacement for Najee Harris, moving along with Omarion Hampton. Ryan, your thoughts on that move?
Yeah, I'm a Steelers fan. Your dad and your younger brother are Steelers fans. So let's see how we feel about this. Josh is a Browns fan, so he's basically just giving them a running back so they don't get better as perhaps as good as they. But Omarion Hampton is a really good football player, and if he comes into the tail end of the first round, I will not be surprised. They got their wide receiver in DK Metcalf, so they don't have to focus on that here. The other thing is the quarterback situation, right? And I'm imagining what those 10 text messages are about. As we sit here, the Steelers do not have a quarterback. Justin Fields is gone. Russ is still out there. And I wonder a couple things. If they're going to try to trade up maybe for Shedeur Sanders if he slips because all the teams ahead of them seem to be signing these quarterbacks, or if maybe Aaron Rodgers is in their future, words I never thought I'd say as a Steelers fan. But if they stay put and take Hampton, I love that pick. He would be an upgrade over what Najee was coming out of Alabama. But again, they got to find a quarterback to throw the ball and hand the ball off to all their new players.
Ryan, yeah, you are right. Obviously, those 10 text messages are about Aaron Rodgers potentially being the new quarterback there in Pittsburgh. So, you know, say in an hour or so, that does happen. What, as a Steelers fan, is your reaction to Aaron Rodgers potentially being your future? How does one Ryan Wilson feel about that?
Here's how you reconcile it. It's like when your best friend gets back together with his girlfriend and it's a toxic relationship, but you just hope that Mike Tomlin can make sure Aaron Rodgers does what he's supposed to do, and we just see all the good of the relationship and none of the crazy bad that ends every previous relationship that they had. So that's the hope, fingers crossed. I can't believe I'm on the Aaron Rodgers train, but let's go.
I just, like, personally, I don't want to be, you know, comparing my franchise quarterback to a toxic relationship, but hey, maybe it works. Maybe it works in Pittsburgh. We don't know. All right. We're going to keep it in the AFC North, but this time we were talking about Baltimore selecting number 27 overall in this draft. Ronnie Stanley has re-signed, but they still take Kelvin Banks Jr. here. Josh, tell us your thought process behind that and how you landed on him being the pick number 27 overall to Baltimore.
So this was a pick that was made with a little bit of an eye towards the future on Thursday when this initially came on CBSSports.com, but Baltimore had to re-sign Ronnie Stanley. They could not let him get to the market. He was such a tremendous player for them this past season and has been a phenomenal left tackle for them throughout the course of his career. But Kelvin Banks played left tackle at Texas, but he is also potentially capable of moving inside to guard, which is a position of need for Baltimore as well. So with Ronnie Stanley back, now you can slide him inside, continue to fortify that offensive line for Lamar Jackson, and continue to allow that defense, or that offense rather, to be one of the most explosive in the league.
Okay, next up we have the Lions, who are selecting at number 28 overall. And this was a team last season we just saw was bit really hard by the injury bug, especially on defense. And we saw that with Aiden Hutchinson. It just seemed like a trickle-down effect from there. In this mock, they are taking edge Landon Jackson. Ryan, how do you like that fit for Detroit?
It works, and you talked about the reasons why. I love the idea of him being opposite Aiden Hutchinson, whether Aiden's healthy or not, because they certainly could have used Landon Jackson last year. And Josh called this at the Combine. He knew that Landon was going to test well, and he absolutely tested through the roof. And that shows up on tape. And he doesn't have to come in and be defensive edge rusher number 1. He can be number 2 or number 3 behind Aiden Hutchinson. Marcus Davenport didn't really work out last year. So if you get a book into Aiden Hutchinson and it's someone with the motor of a Landon Jackson, that feels like a Dan Campbell pick, someone who will be very interested in biting kneecaps on day 1.
Biting kneecaps, that will never not give me a chuckle. At number 29, we were talking about the Commanders here, selecting Josh Simmons. And Josh, I know you had said this guy has the potential to upgrade 2 positions here. Tell us more about that and your reasoning.
Well, first and foremost, he's a left tackle, and they drafted Brandon Coleman to play left tackle this past season, but he has the body stature to potentially slide inside to guard at the next level. You could put him at right tackle and try that as well. So I think just by putting Simmons in there, you're upgrading 2 positions along your offensive line, which at times was pretty porous this past season. And if protecting Jaden Daniels is your priority moving forward, I think first and foremost, you have to solidify the offensive line. And if you're capable of upgrading 2 positions with the selection of 1 player, I think you do that every time.
All right, now we have the Bills, 3 more picks to go, and they're taking corner Shavon Revel Jr., a guy who is coming off of a torn ACL in 2025. So, Ryan, with that in mind, does that concern you at all?
No notes on the pronunciation of Shavon Revel. You crushed that, Jacqueline. Way to go. I love to see it. And I will also say this. He is long. He is freaky athletic. He tore his ACL back in October, but he will be fine and ready to go. And with Rasul Douglas hitting free agency and presumably, as we talk, not coming back, I think he's a natural fit. He's sort of what they were hoping to get in Kyra Elam a few years ago when they drafted him in the first round. Shavon plays with a little more edge to him, and I think he's going to come in at least early in the season once he's cleared medically and be a difference maker.
I cannot take full credit for the pronunciation. I did have to run it by Ryan and Josh, so I will give you guys your kudos. It was a team effort on the pronouncer there. All right, finally we have KC before we get to Philly, and here they're taking Maxwell Hairston. Josh, tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I thought left tackle was going to be a need for this organization before the start of free agency. They went out, they made a move to acquire Jalon Moore unofficially. Will become official on Wednesday, but one position that they have not yet addressed is cornerback. You traded L'Jarius Sneed away a year ago to the Tennessee Titans, never adequately filled that role this past season. So going out, getting a player like Maxwell Hairston, who has incredible ball production, 6 interceptions over the past 2 years, 3 of which were returned for touchdowns, plugging him into that secondary that already has Trent McDuffie. Suddenly you're getting a lot of really good production out of that unit for Steve Spagnuolo and the Kansas City Chiefs defense.
Yeah, Jalon Moore, I know you mentioned it. We're hearing that that's 2-year, $30 million deal for him there in KC. All right, finally, we have arrived at number 32, and that is the Eagles. And, Ryan, they get Tyler Booker at that number 32 overall pick, which seems like, kind of a nice surprise if he's still going to be there on the board.
Yeah, you nailed it. He could go 15 picks higher, and he is plug and play all day long. He'd be an upgrade over Mekhi Becton, who had a great season last year. And I'll just end with this. I talked to Tyler at the Combine, and he credited our buddy Rick Spielman for helping get the most out of Tyler Booker. And I said, Tyler, it had nothing to do with Rick, everything to do with you. Congratulations on being a first-round pick. And when you do get drafted, do not mention Rick Spielman's name under any circumstance, because this is all earned because of what you were able to accomplish at Alabama.
Man, Rick just cannot get away from getting the daggers thrown at him no matter what. Ryan, Josh, we certainly appreciate it. We have gone through all 32 picks for Josh Edwards' latest mock draft. Here's how Josh sees 23 through 32 shaking out. We talked about Tyler Booker potentially going to the Eagles, and then Omarion Hampton going to the Steelers in a mock trade with the Rams. We got more Spotlight coming your way on the other side.